Hello, everybody. Welcome into Betting Pros. I am Ryan Wormeli, joined by my friend PJ Glasser from Game Day Garage and Hoops and Five with PJ Glasser. PJ, we are at the Elite Eight, tipping off later today. So we wanted to hop on, do another live stream, talk about the games we've seen, the games we're going to see, how we're betting these games, maybe talk about some futures at this point in the tournament, and just kind of react to what's been going on here. I believe you were at some of the games in the Sweet 16, which looked awesome going in and pretty much entirely lived up to the hype. How are you feeling at this point in the tournament?
Yeah, I mean, it was an awesome Sweet 16. On paper, we knew some of those matchups would be really good. It started out with that Purdue Texas game, which was fantastic. Iowa Nebraska was great. And then I was at the games in DC last night. St. John's Duke was terrific. Michigan State UConn towards the end got really, really good. So we knew the Sweet 16 had some good matchups, and we were probably going to get some good games, and we did. And I think we're going to get some really good Elite Eight matchups as well. Look, the top four teams, according to KenPom, are all still alive, and they're all pretty sizable favorites in their Elite Eight games. So, the talk of last year's tournament was we had all four number one seeds in the Final Four, and those were the four best teams in the country. And now here we sit in the Elite Eight. And again, even though not all four one seeds are going to make it, we have another chance at getting the four best teams into the Final Four. So it's been a great tournament up to this point. I think most people, just about everybody, would agree it's been a lot better than last year. We did have that mid-major upset with High Point in the first round. We've had Iowa and Tennessee do a little bit of damage to get to the Elite Eight. But again, Worm, you forecast some of these matchups that we have. I mean, some of the matchups we have in the Elite Eight, but especially in the Final Four. Like if we can get a Michigan-Arizona game in the Final Four, I mean, good God, what a game that would be. Even Illinois-Duke would be awesome. So excited for these games, and man, just excited for the potential what some of these Final Four matchups can be.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it a lot in that first weekend. When you don't have a lot of upsets early, it feels like a little disappointing for that first initial rush of the couple of days to start off the tournament. But the result is it's pretty much impossible to have bad matchups the rest of the way. And there's almost no matchup here that we have now or that we could possibly have in the Final Four that would be disappointing. Like every possible iteration would at least be intriguing from one point of view or another. And a lot of them, like you said, look really, really enticing. First of all, what was the vibe like in the building for those games in DC that you were obviously able to get to go to? Did you feel like the fans were talking about like did you feel like the vibe of the fans was like, this is an awesome tournament and we're really excited? Because again, I feel like at the beginning of the tournament there was talk about like, well, NIL has changed things and there's not as many Cinderellas. Did you feel like in person that was the vibe, or was it more like, holy cow, we get Rick Pitino against Duke and UConn, Michigan State? Did it feel more like excited than it did like, oh, I wish there was a Cinderella here?
No, yeah. I mean, everybody was excited for the firepower that was in that building. And the fact that, all the fan bases, it was pretty drivable for a lot of them. I mean, as you know, living in the DC area for a good amount of your life, I mean, there's a ton of Michigan State alumni here. Durham is very drivable from DC. It's like 4 hours. St. John's and UConn fans can just take the train down from Connecticut and New York. So you had a good representation of all the fan bases, a lot of Johnny's fans. That first game was great. I think, Worm, anytime you're in the Sweet 16 and, those teams that are playing in the second game, a lot of times their fans will show up a little bit later and they'll get there for the end of that first game. So with Duke and St. John's, that game being as good as it was in the second half, and they're going back and forth, and it's close in the final 5 minutes. People, I mean, there was a lot of excitement. The Johnny's fans were loud; they were making a lot of noise, and it looked like for a while there that they were going to pull up off the upset. They were up 10 with about 15 minutes to go. But Caleb Foster, just unbelievable how he was able to come back, not only play in this game. But Worm, I don't know if they win if he doesn't play. He made some massive buckets down the stretch. He had some big rebounds as well. So that was the big question with Duke. I mean, when they were fully healthy, they looked like the team to beat. He gets hurt. You watch him in the ACC championship game. They kind of struggle in all three of those games. And then obviously Siena and TCU doesn't look great. Yesterday against St. John's, they're trailing by double digits in the second half. But Foster was great. Evans made some huge shots down the stretch as well. And then, UConn, Michigan State, when Sparty started making that comeback, there was a lot of excitement. The Spartan fans were starting to get into it. And then, everybody, I think, is just excited for Sunday with Duke and UConn. That's going to be such a great game.
By the way, thanks everybody for joining us here at the top of the show. Please make sure to drop a like if you're tuning in, subscribe, and click the bell so you never miss a live stream. PJ and I will be here for roughly an hour. It depends. There's fewer games that we had last week, so we might be going a little shorter. So if you have a question that you want to ask about a future or any of these, awesome Elite Eight games coming up, or just want to drop a comment to say hello, be sure to get that in early just in case we go a little shorter this time with fewer games to talk about. We're going to preview the games we have here, the regional finals in each region, and then we will talk a little bit about some future possibilities and what we're looking at here for the Final Four and the national championship. PJ, I think let's go. Actually, I want to ask you one more big picture thing.
Mm-hmm.
One of the just consistent conversations for the last 2 decades, every March Madness is this going to be the year the Big Ten finally breaks its streak and wins a national championship? Oftentimes, the Big Ten is one of the top or top 2 conferences throughout the course of the regular season by a lot of the metrics, and then they fall short of their seed lines in March, and it's usually like, oh, well, the ACC was terrible, but all the teams they did get in advanced very far. This year, not that the Big Ten was terrible, but they are now the conference that has everybody advancing. Half of the Elite Eight are Big Ten teams: Michigan, Illinois, Purdue, and of course, Iowa, the closest thing we have to a Cinderella. Do you think, if you had to say right now, and I'm not even asking what your favorite bet is, but just yes or no, will this be the year that the Big Ten finally snaps their streak?
I'm still going to say no because I still think Arizona is the best team. And I think Duke's the best team on the left-handed side of the bracket, right? So they get UConn and then obviously the Illinois-Iowa winner. So I still think the favorite in the clubhouse has got to be Arizona-Duke national championship, even though you have 4 Big Ten teams in there. I still think it's probably going to be one of those 2 teams. Michigan just continues to impress. I mean, they have shot the ball so well through the first 3 games of the tournament. Last night, Mara didn't even play great. Marez Johnson didn't play great. Namari Burnett still had 2 points, but it was their depth with Gale and McKinney that stepped up. That's what makes them so tough. So Michigan's certainly good enough to do it. That Purdue-Arizona game, and I know we're going to get into that one tonight or in a little bit, that goes on tonight. Purdue is preseason number 1. They have all that talent. It hasn't been, the easiest road up to this point. Certainly they got a little bit of a scare from Miami trailing in the first half. And then that Texas game came down to a buzzer beater. Illinois, I actually think might be their second best shot, but behind Michigan. Illinois has just got so much talent. They're so good offensively. And I think what you have to be excited about if you're an Illinois fan is you survived and advanced your offensive dud game, right? Like you kind of beat Houston at their own game, which I think makes Illinois really, really scary. Now they're going up against another really good defensive team tonight, a team that's going to want to slow it down and force them into bad shots. But to watch Illinois beat Houston the way that they did, they still got their A game, offensive game in them. And, if they play that against Duke or UConn or whoever it is, I mean, they can beat anybody in the country. So they obviously have a good shot. They got 4 of the 8 teams remaining. I still think Arizona Duke national title is your favorite. So I'm going to lean no. But yeah, I mean, they have 3 teams, definitely Michigan, Purdue, and Illinois that are good enough to do it.
By the way, and you know how I feel about Brad Underwood. I think Illinois is absolutely the second best chance for the Big Ten. If for no other reason than they have a much easier path than Purdue does. Like Illinois gets to face again, Iowa's a good team, but the weakest team that's remaining in the field. And then the weakest remaining 1 seed on paper, at least by KenPom right now in Duke, theoretically, or not even having to face 1 seed. Whereas Purdue, to get to the title game, likely they're definitely going to have to go through Arizona, who's the favorite, and then probably will have to go through Michigan as well. So it's a much harder path for them if you're looking at one of these kind of secondary Big Ten teams. So it's probably Michigan or Illinois if it's going to happen. At the end of the show, I want to circle back to these 1 seeds because I find it fascinating how in KenPom, we at various points in this tournament, each of Duke, Arizona, and Michigan has been the number 1 team in KenPom. It has been that close, and they've moved around a bunch just based on performance here in the first few games of the tournament. So we'll talk about that more when we get to sort of the futures picks. Let's jump into the games themselves. We will go. I hadn't decided what order, if I want to go chronologically or just continue to go around the bracket. Let's continue to work around the bracket the way we have on our previous show. So we'll go in the East region here to start. Duke, UConn. This game is going to be, of course, not today, but tomorrow on Sunday. The 1 seed versus the 2 seed. UConn, it has not been a great team this season relative to what we've seen the last few years here, PJ. And yet Dan Hurley in March has proven to be one of these coaches that just like consistently is well prepared, has his guys playing well, a difficult offense to get ready for. And I mean, they jumped out to an incredible start against Michigan State. Spartans crawl back in that one. And it ends up being a really close, really fun game. UConn winning by 4. So coming off of that game, do you feel maybe better about UConn than you did at the start of the tournament, like seeing what they can do when they're on, against another really good team like Michigan State and just the fact that they got here? Or do you feel worse about them given that they were kind of in a close one against Furman? It's been a lot of like pulling away late until the reverse here against Michigan State where they jumped out early and then kind of had to hold on. There hasn't been like a start to finish, like this is the dominant version of this team yet. Not that Duke's been, blowing teams out right and left either, but for UConn specifically, do you feel better or worse about them now than you did at the start of the tournament?
I think you probably have to feel a little bit better, I would say, just because, Hurley won the 2 national titles. Last year, they lose to the Gators in the final minute, who go on to win the national title. So it's like the two of the last 3 years, he's had the best team in the tournament. Last year, his team wasn't good enough to win a national title or make the Final Four, but they were still super competitive against the eventual champs. So, and this year, it's like he has a good enough team to get to the Final Four, probably not good enough to win the national championship. So, like, what does that kind of look like? And I think it looks like Elite Eight. So, I filled out my bracket and I had UConn in the Elite Eight just because I didn't feel like there was really anybody in their path that was going to knock them out before that. UCLA, if Bilodeau would have played, who knows what that game would have looked like. Michigan State game last night, I mean, we all knew it was going to be a coin flip. That could have gone either way. But I thought with Hurley and still the pros and the caliber of players that UConn had, they were good enough to get to this game. And I think you have to feel a little bit better if you're a UConn fan, just because, again, you're kind of playing with house money in this game. And it's not often that Hurley and UConn are the underdog in March and that people aren't expecting them to win that kind of game. And when you get teams and programs that aren't used to being the underdog in those kinds of roles, more often than not, they usually cover. And, a lot of times they usually win those kinds of games. I think this is going to be a really interesting matchup. Michigan State last night, I was really surprised with how often they let their big men go one-on-one with Terrace Reed in the post. That was really surprising to me, especially with the way that UConn's really been struggling a little bit to shoot the 3-point shot in this tournament and as of late. And I thought Hurley and UConn, they were trying to feed Reed as much as they can, but I think they should have gone to him on every possession. With Duke, I mean, they're such a good defensive team, and they're so good in the post with Malik Brown and Ngumba, and even Cam Boozer can guard down low. So I think they're also just going to let their big men go one-on-one in the post. Now, with Zuby last night, they did try and trap him a little bit, and Zuby was able to make some threes, which definitely Duke was willing to give him, and he was just able to knock them down. But to me, that's the matchup, is how does Duke defend Terrace Reed? And if they send the double, is UConn able to knock down their 3-point shots? I'm leaning Duke in the game, Worm, just because we all knew for St. John's to pull the upset last night, they were going to need to hit their threes, and they did. And even despite the fact that they hit their threes, they turned Duke over, they forced steals, Duke missed free throws, they still weren't able to win the game. So, it's just like, it begs the question, if UConn hits their threes, is it going to be enough to beat Duke? And I just don't know if it is. So this game's probably going to be close. It's probably going to come down to the wire. It's probably a great live betting game, like it's 5.5, but you're telling me if UConn doesn't become 10.5, 11.5 at one point during the game, you wouldn't take that. Or if Duke is a cheap money line price or they're even plus money, you wouldn't take that. I think it's a great live betting game. So that's ultimately how I bet it. I think Duke wins. The number feels about right. It kind of feels to me how I felt about Duke St. John's, where I don't want to bet the spread. I think Duke wins. It probably falls right around the number. But the matchup for me, Terrace Reed has been so good in the tournament. I think you feel good about that if you're a UConn fan. But is he able to exploit that matchup in this game against those Duke big men?
What do you think about the total? I was texting you a little last night, and I threw out that I liked the under. That was just kind of looking, at the line right away as it came out, having a chance to sleep on it. You seemed to be leaning in that direction as well. Do you still feel that way?
Yeah, I probably would. Two good defensive teams, and it is low at 133.5. The only thing that scares me is in the Sweet 16. It felt like there were two games there. Everybody was aligned on betting the under. That was Iowa, Nebraska, and Duke St. John's last night. I didn't hear anybody that liked the over in either of those games, and of course, both the games go over. So I do have a feeling that the under probably going to be a little popular in this game. That is the way that I would lean. UConn especially knows that they're probably going to have to muck it up with Duke and try and hang around. I don't think I'll end up betting the total, though, in the game.
We have a question here from Spen. Duke Michigan moneyline parlay is even money or thereabouts at most books. Is that worth it? What do you think about that, PJ? An even money parlay, Duke Michigan money line.
Yeah, I think that's a good move. I think, a lot of these games are really good games to parlay the money line favorites because, in a couple of these, in one of the Elite Eight games, you have familiarity with the conference opponent in Iowa, Illinois. In two of the other Elite Eight games, you have 1 seed versus 2 games in UConn, Duke, and Purdue, Arizona, which should be close. And then Michigan and Tennessee. Michigan, they usually can just bully people around and use their size and physicality. They're really not going to be able to do that against Tennessee. 7.5, 8.5 is a lot of points. So, all these games, I look at them and I really don't want to lay the points. I think the money line is the way to go. And I think Duke Michigan would be a good money line parlay, especially if you can get that at even money.
If I'm building out any parlay with this group of games, the first leg I'm starting with is Michigan money line because yes. I that is one where I totally agree. I really am uncomfortable laying the points in that. Like I was looking at the spread last night and I even though I really like Michigan to win, I couldn't get there. It's a lot of points, but I do think they're going to win, even if I don't have a feel of how close. I mean, I could see that game being a blowout. I could see it being really close. It's hard to see Tennessee winning. I think Michigan's going to win that game, even if I don't have a feel for what the score is going to be. So I think that a money line, any sort of parlay with the Michigan money line as sort of the anchor is I think a really smart play. You actually texted me last night, PJ, some interest in parlaying all 4 favorites together in this, not just 2 of them. I mean, obviously we'll be getting different odds if you had all 4 there, but you have already, even last night before we got that question, been talking about that sort of approach to this round. So yeah, we both think it's smart at even money there with those 2. Let's go to the next game here. Actually, first, do you think college hoops? Take your bracket knowledge to the next level with the brand new NCAA Tournament Pick'em contest. Pick your winners or make your predictions against the spread all tournament long for a chance to win signed jerseys, free annual Betting Pros subscriptions, and Fantasy Pros Shop Store credit. Best part is it's completely free. Enter now at bettingpros.com/pick. Also, the betting edges in the NCAA tournament can be found anywhere. If you know where to look, head to bettingpros.com/premium or download the Betting Pros app and get 26% off Betting Pros Premium with code MADNESS26 and make smarter picks all tournament long. All right, PJ, now let's get to my favorite game of this round. I think a lot of people are very excited about this one. Arizona, Purdue. This was my Elite Eight in the brackets I filled out. I decided at the beginning of filling out my brackets that whoever I had winning this game, I was going to have winning it all. I was just buying into Purdue as a smart bet, particularly in terms of value in actual betting. Also in terms of if you're in a large bracket pool, not as many people are going to be picking them. So a good way to differentiate. I was just really bought in on Purdue. They haven't looked dominant in this run, of course. Like you said, they easily could have lost to Texas, easily could have lost to Miami, but here they are where I expected them to be. Meanwhile, the team that has looked utterly dominant has been Arizona. And this is, I have started to feel last year, PJ, let me say 2 years ago. That was UConn's second year, right? It was 2 years ago. I'm not forgetting a team in the middle there. Okay. 2 years ago, I really wanted to pick UConn, and I felt like everybody and their mother was picking UConn. And so I got off of it in my bracket pools. And then I didn't have the national championship because I didn't want to go where everybody else was going. But the team I thought was going to win won. Last year, I really wanted to pick Florida, but I felt like everybody and their mother was picking Florida, and I didn't want to be the same as everybody else. So I changed my pick and I didn't pick Florida. This year, I really wanted to pick Arizona. I felt like everybody and their mother was picking Arizona. And in one pool, I did keep them. In the other pool, I did switch off them because I got scared. But I feel like this is going to be the third straight year where the team that was the favorite going in based on either having been dominant the whole year or just the way everybody was playing going into the tournament, the team that was the favorite anecdotally at the books everywhere ends up just, hey, they're keeping this momentum and going on a dominant run and getting there. Now, Florida played close games last year, right? UConn didn't really 2 years ago. Arizona so far has not really played a close game. They only won by 12 over Utah State, but that game didn't ever feel in doubt. They utterly dominated their other two teams they've faced. And now they get a Purdue team that is very good and very talented, very experienced. They're a top 8 team on KenPom, but still has felt like a disappointment for a lot of the year. That's a very long-winded intro and a way of just me asking, like, what are you doing with this game? Because I think it's a super fun matchup. I'm really excited to watch. Like, it's one of those fun over types of games where, like, you want to bet the over regardless of the line, just because you could see it being a really fun, high-scoring back and forth game. What's your initial reaction to seeing Arizona Purdue in the bracket?
So initial reaction is I wanted to attack this game in the player prop market because it is a high total at 153.5. Trey Kaufman-Wren's been great for Purdue in the tournament so far, had the game winner against Texas, but his player props at 17.5. And I don't know if this is a particularly good matchup for TKR because of obviously the size that Arizona has and the bodies that they can throw at them with Krivas and Koa Pete, and then Awaka comes off the bench. I kind of think this is a Braden Smith game. So if you're in a state where you can bet college player props, over 15.5 points for Smith is a bet that I am going to make on this game today. I think in that pick and roll game, he's going to be hunting his shot a little bit. You know, he's got a chance to go to a Final Four. He's a senior. I think even though he's the all-time assist leader in college basketball history, I think he's going to hunt his shot a little bit in this game. And I think he knows that they're going to need his scoring if they're going to want to pull off the upset today. I also think he wants to try and make Jaden Bradley a defender a little bit, try and get him into foul trouble if he can. So I just think there's a lot of reasons, like matchup wise, and just kind of game schematically, why Smith would be a little bit more aggressive as a scorer. Arizona, it's so tough to kind of look at their prop market because they're so well balanced, and it really could be any guy that goes off any kind of night. You would think in a game like this would probably be a Bradley or a Burries game. More so Bradley, I would think. Like if I were to bet between the two, I would look Jaden Bradley over 12.5 points, but I do really like Braden Smith's prop. I think he could go for close to 20 tonight. My problem with Purdue in this matchup is, of the 8 teams remaining, they have the worst defense of the 8. Now, it's not as bad as Arkansas, but that was the key with the Arkansas-Arizona game. I think we all knew Arkansas would be able to score because Arkansas can score on anybody, but where would the stops come? And that's what I worry a little bit about with Purdue is if they're not getting stops, they play at such a slow pace, even though they're so efficient offensively. They just put so much pressure on themselves in a game like this where you're already going to have to be pretty close to perfect to win, that you really got to make your shots on offense because you don't really cause a lot of turnovers and you don't play at a fast pace to generate extra possessions and maybe lull Arizona or trick Arizona into getting like a fast pace up and down type game. So I do think Arizona wins. I would probably lean them covering the spread as well if I had to bet it. But again, I think Arizona in a money line parlay, man, is the way to go. I think they win the game, but my favorite play is probably Braden Smith over 15.5 points.
I feel like, a lot of teams are big, but you don't, when you watch them, you don't always feel their size. Arizona, you feel their size. Like just watching them, you don't need to like pull up their, height and weight on their roster to know that they're big. They play big. Obviously, they're a good 3-point shooting team. They just don't shoot a lot of threes because they don't need to, because they can use their size better than anybody. I feel like Arizona's size, I think Purdue will be able to score on Arizona's size. I don't think they'll be able to defend Arizona's size. And I think that is why Arizona is obvious. I mean, obviously they're the favorite for a reason. I think I agree with you. As much as I do like Purdue, I feel like if I had to bet a side, I would bet Arizona to cover here. I think if I wanted to back Purdue, just because I wanted to kind of believe in the upset for whatever reason, I think I would probably take Purdue money line rather than the spread. Because I think if they win, I think if they're not going to win by a lot, right? So, whereas Arizona, I think, could win by a lot. So I think I'd rather just like lay the points if I had to pick a side. And then if I really want to just take like a long shot bet, then I'm not going to bet Purdue with the points. I'm going to take them to win and hope for kind of, I don't want to call it a miracle because Purdue's, again, a really good team, but like borderline feels like a miracle the way Arizona has looked as of late. And you're right. Them being the worst defense, like we just saw what Arizona looked like against the previous worst defense left in the tournament. And now they get the next one. So, I mean, again, that's why, like I said, it's a fun over. It's a really high number. Like I'm not encouraging people to go bet the over, but like that's a fun over to be rooting for and could see a really fun back and forth game. I had that, what was the game? I'm trying to remember. Oh yeah. I was like, which game? It was Arizona, Arkansas. I was like, that number is huge, but I'm going to take the over anyway because it's really fun. And then they got hit the over with like 8 minutes left in the game. And I mean, despite it being the number it was. So
yeah.
Sometimes it is fun to just kind of take that approach here. But yeah, so far we like the favorites, Duke in the East, Arizona in the West, and kind of taking different angles than the just picking the numbers are good, right? That's, you said that when we're talking about Duke UConn, it feels like a lot of these numbers are about right where they should be. And there's not a ton to take advantage of in terms of like, this is just simply like there's no wrong team favorite here. There's no wrong line here, at least as far as I can tell. So we'll see how we feel in the next couple of regions. Let's go to the Midwest. Michigan, Tennessee, the second lowest seed remaining, a 6 seed after upsetting Iowa State and Virginia in back-to-back weeks. I did have this in my bracket, Michigan, Tennessee as the Elite 8 here. Less out of a love for Tennessee and more out of like, I didn't feel like Virginia was a very strong 3. And I felt like Iowa State was gettable and I wanted to have, not just all 1s and 2s of courses. So I do have this in the bracket and I have Michigan winning. And this feels like not the easiest game to bet the spread of what's remaining, but like we said before, the easiest anchor in a parlay. I just think Michigan's going to win. And I don't really see a case for Tennessee winning, barring a really, really surprising Michigan performance. I don't think Tennessee can play so well that they knock Michigan off. I think Michigan has to play worse for it to happen. I don't think like Tennessee's best game, I don't think is beating Michigan's B+ game. I think Michigan needs to have a real dud to lose.
I agree. And any chance Tennessee wants to have in this game, they got to shoot it uncharacteristically great from 3-point range. I think a lot of people felt like in this region, Bama was probably the best chance to beat Michigan just because of the way that they can score in the 3-point shot. And Bama played a hell of a first half, but that's what makes Michigan so good is Bama plays an A+ first half. And Michigan probably plays like an A-B first half. They're only down 2, keep themselves in striking distance, and then they start to pull away in the second half. So I think if you're Tennessee, Nate Ament looked way better last night than he did in the first 2 games in the tournament. So it looks like that ankle's starting to feel a little bit better. Gillespie had his worst game of the 3 in the tournament, and they still won pretty comfortably over Iowa State. Those guys are obviously going to need to be great, but again, man, like Michigan, I think why so many people during the regular season thought they were the best team is their depth. All these teams are so good. The top teams that are left are really good. And, they all have depth, but it just feels like Michigan's depth is the strongest. And for them really to not get much out of Mara last night or Merez Johnson or Namari Burnett, 3 starters that combined to score less than 20 points and they still win that game and cover by 13 points. So it was super impressive. McKinney and Gale off the bench last night were great for the Wolverines. They're shooting the ball so well from 3-point range. I think that's what scares me about this game is Rick Barnes. If there's something that his teams do so well, they guard the 3-point line unbelievably well. Nate Oates and Alabama have never been able to score more than 80 points on Tennessee in 6-7 years against Rick Barnes. They've never been able to do it. And then you watch Miami of Ohio play against Tennessee in the first round. Obviously a team where everybody on the floor can shoot it. They really struggle. So, I think for a team that shoots a lot of threes in Michigan and they're really efficient, Tennessee should do a pretty good job of shutting that down. But again, what makes Michigan so good, threes aren't working. They can pound it inside. And I ultimately just think the offense is too much. But since I don't think Michigan's going to be able to shoot the three as well as they have the first 3 games of the tournament, it's why I don't really want to lay the 7.5. So I think the Vols could lose this game by 5 or 6 points and cover the number. But Worm, I'm with you. I just have a hard time seeing Michigan lose this game. So I do like the Wolverines. I think they're a great money line parlay piece. I just get a little bit nervous of the spread because, if you're, especially at this point in the tournament, if you're laying that big of a number, your team's pretty much going to need to hit threes to create some distance. And I just don't know if Michigan's going to do that as efficiently as they have been the first 3 rounds.
Are you the type of bettor who when you're picking a game like this, you say, listen, like whatever I thought about Michigan before, which was, highly, but whatever I thought about them before, now that I see they're one of 4 teams in the Elite Eight from their conference, maybe their winning the Big Ten was even more impressive than I realized. And I want to be even stronger on them. Do you take that approach at all when you look at like how other teams in or like the opposite being Arizona, like, hey, Houston and Iowa State just lost like not even to really teams playing their A+ games, and they still lost to their opponents last round. Maybe Arizona's run through the Big 12 was slightly less impressive than I realized. Do you take that approach when betting at this stage in the tournament a few rounds in?
Yeah, I think for sure. We talked about that pre-tournament, right? I mean, every year in March Madness, you just kind of look at the way that you should handicap games and the way that you should pick your bracket is you kind of go all in on one conference and you kind of fade conferences. And this year it's been fading the ACC and it's been backing the Big Ten. So I think you definitely have to look at how these conferences are performing and how they've been. And again, Michigan was so good in the non-conference in the early part of the regular season, which is normally a great indicator of how these teams tend to play out this time of the year. Florida was awful in the non-conference this year, and then they get bounced in the round of 32, right? So, and I was certainly a victim of this, was getting jaded a little bit by how Michigan was looking down the stretch of Big Ten play. And now you clearly see how good the league is. And it makes sense why they wouldn't look as dominant as they were when you're playing good team after good team. And, to finish the season, they had Iowa and Michigan State and Purdue, and then they're playing Wisconsin and Purdue again in the Big Ten tourney. So obviously playing a lot of really good teams. I think just getting out of conference helped them. And now they're starting to look a lot like that team that we saw earlier in the year that a bunch of people thought was the favorite to win the whole thing.
It's also funny we're talking about Michigan as if they like stumbled so much down the stretch. They have 2 losses since January 10th,
Right.
and that was to Duke and then Purdue, 2 top 8 teams in KenPom. So like it's not like they were losing games right and left when they were struggling. It wasn't as much of a dominant blowout after blowout after blowout as it had been. Speaking of the Big Ten, let's go to the South here. We have Iowa, Illinois, a conference rematch here. For the regional final and the right to go to the Final Four. I believe these 2 teams only played once, if I'm looking at the schedule correctly. Illinois won at Iowa on January 11th. Again, so 2.5 months ago, by just 6 points. That was 75-69. So kind of another philosophical question, PJ. I'm curious what you think about this game now, but also, do you look at that game and take anything from it, or is that just too long ago to really care about that result when you're picking this one?
Yeah, I think, you kind of have to throw those regular season numbers out the window. Iowa just played against a team in Nebraska that they saw twice during the regular season. Both those games were close in the regular season, and that game was close again in the tournament. So you would expect this to be a close game. I do think Illinois has a little bit of an advantage, though, Worm, even though both teams know each other, they've played each other, there's a lot of familiarity there. I think one of the advantages that you may get going from, round of 64, round of 32, Sweet 16 to Elite 8, when you get that quick turnaround, is when you're playing against a team that it's hard to prepare for. And for Illinois to spend 5 days on Houston, toughness, physicality, team that struggles to shoot the ball at times, defensive minded, and then you're getting essentially a worse version of that in this game. I think is really beneficial for Illinois. It's not like you kind of have to recalibrate the mind or you have to get ready for a team that you saw earlier in the season and it's a much different tempo and much different style. Like Illinois knows the kind of rock fight that they're going to be dealing with today. They know what they're getting into. So the fact that they just dealt with that in a Houston team, I think is a big help for them, knowing they're going to get the same kind of game against Iowa, where Iowa, again, like they have faced Florida in this tournament, but Illinois from an offensive perspective just presents so many more challenges. Florida was one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the country. They were great on the glass. Illinois is also great on the glass, but I mean, the guard play for Illinois is just so much better, led by Wagler. So I think Illinois wins. I think it could be close. Again, McCollum's just a terrific coach. It actually just went back up to 7.5 at some spots. Like, I just think that's too high. I don't want to lay 7.5 with Illinois in a game like this, and you compare the two games, Worm, and it's like Michigan, Tennessee, Illinois, Iowa. Like both of those games right now are 7.5 point spreads. Michigan, Tennessee feels like it should be 7.5. Illinois, Iowa, like that just feels like it's a little too high. So that's why I wouldn't lay that. But I think the Illini, again, good money line parlay piece.
Yeah, normally I think I would be more aggressive on Iowa because I would say like these two teams know each other really well. It's McCollum's first year at Iowa, so it's not like he has this really long history of facing Illinois. So that means a little less to me than it normally would, seeing two conference teams with a big spread in the Elite Eight going up against each other. But like, I just think McCollum is straight up a better coach than Brad Underwood. Like, I don't need to see years of this to be convinced of that. Like, we did see years of it just at a lower level, but like his talent was commensurate with that level. And he is one of the best tournament records in coaching history. McCollum, I'm talking about when he was a D2, he did really well with Drake in his year there. He's obviously doing very well with Iowa here. Like I'm convinced, like, I think he's one of like the great in-game coaches and just game planners. And I think he's really, really good at this and has particularly been good in a tournament setting where you need to be ready to have quick turnarounds for different games. Like you talk about, how Illinois is facing a similar opponent here, like in Iowa compared to Houston. Iowa's not really getting that in terms of Nebraska to Illinois, but I really trust McCollum to have a strong and smart turnaround on the court and with the game plan and everything. So like, I do think Iowa, I'm not saying it's like by a huge margin, like Brad Underwood, for as much, crap as I give him, isn't terrible, but I do think Iowa has the coaching advantage. Iowa has the experience, point guard in March advantage over Illinois. They don't have really many advantages beyond that, but like you're telling me this is a conference rematch and the team that's getting 7.5 points has the better coach and the better sort of March fit, point guard with experience. That really moves the needle for me. I feel like I am often the guy, and I know they're not like a true Cinderella. This is a top 25 team on Ken Palm, right? But like they're the closest thing we have to a Cinderella. I'm usually the guy who like finally buys in on the Cinderella, the round where it's too late and then they finally lose. But yeah, it's hard, I think, with the line what it is. I think it's a great point by you. Like Michigan feels like they should be favored by as much as they are. Illinois, despite being a top 4 team on Ken Palm and very, very good, it doesn't feel so much like they should be this kind of a favorite over Iowa. So I like the Iowa side here. Probably my favorite pick against the spread of any of these 4 matchups, I would say.
I agree. Yeah, maybe I will get to the window with Iowa now that it's a 7.5 because I just do think that's too many points. I'm excited to see the crowd distribution for that game too, because with it being played in Houston and them losing, I'm sure that freed up a whole bunch of tickets for those people to come down today and root on their teams in the Elite Eight. So that should be a great crowd. It should be a lot of fun. I think Illinois wins the game. But Iowa, like, it's a lot of points with the team that just, they're so well coached. They know their identity. They know how they want to play. And I would not be surprised if that game's close.
The other like thing with this one is like, I'm not really worried about the spread from Illinois' perspective. If Illinois can win by 8 and cover, they can win by 20, right? Like if Illinois just goes nuclear, they can absolutely dominate this game. Whereas getting that many points on the Iowa side is really appealing to like I'm much more interested in it from the Iowa side as opposed to like Illinois. Yeah, like if you think they can cover just about any number. Like on the right night, they can go off. So it's not like, oh, they can get to 8. Yeah, they can get to 30. Like if the right game plays out that way. Obviously, I'm not expecting that, but getting the 7.5 for Iowa, I think is really appealing. We got another question here from Spen. He would have picked Iowa to lose every game this far. So at some point, got to throw his hands up and take the points. I don't disagree with that, Spen, on the Hawkeyes. And I know our producer Seth is enjoying us talking so much about them after we laughed in his face when he asked if we thought they could beat Florida last week. So we were proven wrong there. Another question here from TS. Don't overthink it. Arizona money line, easiest money I've seen since UConn a few years ago. I mean, yeah, I made the comparison in that discussion of Florida last year and UConn the year before. Obviously, Florida played some closer games last year, but just kind of feeling like the team that everybody's behind does go on and keep winning, and they've looked really dominant doing it. I think the one thing on Arizona, and I do want to kind of transition into a bit of a futures discussion here, PJ. To wrap up the show, I think the one thing on Arizona is that, like, because I know Arizona or Arkansas can score a lot, but because they have such a good offense, I think that game, maybe some people looked at it as closer of a matchup than it was on paper. The defense was not good, and they have not had to face like Illinois beat a top 5 Houston team on Ken Palm, right? Like, Duke played a St. John's team coached by a Hall of Fame, maybe the greatest coach of all time, who had been playing well in St. John's. Michigan faced Alabama, who was coming off a really high, like dominant performance in the opening weekend and can get hot at any time. Arizona hasn't really faced that. Again, Arkansas has the scoring. They have a cuff, but they don't have the defense to keep up with a team like Arizona. So is there any part of you that is like a little worried about not overreacting to the last couple of games, because we already knew Arizona was really good before these last couple of games? We're not thinking they're good because of the first 3 rounds of the tournament, but of not wanting to like lean too far into them being the favorites to win it all, just because like the competition, I mean, it will get harder this tonight, but hasn't quite been at the same level as maybe some of these other 1 seeds had to face yet.
Yeah, I think a little bit, but also Arizona has been playing with the pressure of the fact that they've never gotten to this point with Tommy Lloyd. They've never gotten the Elite 8, and people have never really felt this way about Arizona. Like, they've been a 1 seed in the past. The year with Matherin, they had a really good team. People were picking them to win it all, but it just felt like coming into this tournament, if Tommy Lloyd couldn't at least get to the Final Four or win it with this team, he might have a hard time doing it, because this team is just, they're so well built. They really don't have any weaknesses. They do everything well, especially if they're knocking down their 3-point shots. So, yeah, look, Purdue, this was a team that just kind of needed to get out of the regular season, and they won the Big Ten tournament. And now here they are, and they're playing well. In March, they got past Texas. You also just wonder, too, if like Indiana won the national championship in college football, and now Purdue's just going to go win it in college basketball, right? And how crazy that would be. But no, I agree with TS, man. I just think Arizona's just, they're too good. They're too good. They're battle tested. To lose 2 games in that Big 12 conference, and also the non-conference that they played, I mean, they're a hell of a team, and they can just beat you in so many different ways. So I think they match up pretty good as well. I'm interested to see what Tommy Lloyd does with Braden Smith. Like, does he put the bigger size of Karchenkov on him? And maybe he lets Jaden Bradley or Burries run around and guard Fletcher Lawyer, and you put somebody on Cox. Like, I think that's what he ends up doing, is he goes with Karchenkov on Braden Smith, and maybe that size and length could bother him a little bit. So yeah, I think they match up pretty well with Arizona, with Purdue, and I think they're going to win the game.
I do feel like Arizona by far is the team most likely for us to look back in April and say, oh, it was obviously them all along. Like I think that is a team, like, if Duke wins, I think we were justified in being a little nervous with, the injury to Caleb Foster and the region they had to get through. Like, Arizona is the one where I think, looking back, it's the most likely scenario of, yeah, we overthought it. It was just them from the beginning. And we didn't really overthink it. I mean, we picked them to win when we did our preview of the whole bracket. But yeah, like that's the team that you look back and go, yeah, it was kind of always Arizona. They're just the most complete team. They have the fewest question marks, it feels like, of any team in the country, and has really felt that way for a while now. Like you said, just the 2 losses, one of them in overtime. So they're really, really, really good. We're going to talk a little bit more about futures, but just a reminder for everybody, you can join PJ and myself next Sunday, not Saturday, Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern on the Betting Pros YouTube channel for NCAA tournament picks and betting breakdowns for the national championship. Really excited to be reacting to the Final Four on that morning and looking ahead to the title game with you, PJ. Is Arizona your favorite bet if you're placing a future right now, just because you think they're so good? I mean, you're not getting the best number with them that you would compare to some of these other elite teams. Would you rather take a swing on like an Illinois, who's still a top 4 team in Ken Palm? Connecticut just saying like, hey, UConn under Hurley, like when they get this far, they usually go all the way. Do you have like a deeper bet you like, or is it really you want to stick with Arizona, maybe Michigan?
I think it's Arizona. They're still the play for me. If they play Michigan, that game's going to be a pick 'em. If they get Duke in the national championship, that game's going to be a pick 'em. I just think they're the best team. It kind of feels that way when you watch them. So I still like Arizona the best. I think if you were looking for a longer shot value, it would probably be Illinois because, sizable favorites today against Iowa. Probably be about a 2.5-point dog against Duke, or they'd be favored against UConn. I think their offense, they could win either of those games. I think ultimately they lose to Arizona or Michigan in the national title game, but maybe you get yourself a hedging opportunity there if you want to back the Illini, if you're looking for somebody maybe outside of the big 3 at a longer price. But Arizona was my pick at the start of the tournament. They're my pick going in the Sweet 16, and they're still my pick now. There's nothing that I have seen that would take me off of Arizona. Today's game could get tricky at times, but I think they'll find a way to win, and I still like them to win it all.
Sorry, did you say, what do you think the line would be in Michigan, Arizona in the Final Four? You think it'd be a pick 'em? Yeah. I mean, I want to see that game so bad.
I know. That game would absolutely rock. I mean, Worm, right now on Ken Palm, Michigan's net rating is 38.11.
I'm looking at this right now. This is
Arizona's
amazing.
is 38.10. I mean, they're separated by a tenth of a rating. So
that's incredible.
Michigan's 5th on offense, 1st on defense. Arizona's 4th on offense, 3rd on defense, and they're both top 55 in tempo. So the game would have a nice little pace to it. It would be an unbelievably good basketball game. So I think if any of those 3 teams play, it's a pick 'em. Duke, Arizona, Michigan, they're all kind of bubbled right there. Illinois is probably like a 2.5, 3.5-point dog to all those teams as well. So that's what makes it exciting. I mean, you really could make a case for really any 3 of those teams. I think most would probably tell you Arizona, then Michigan, then Duke, but I like Arizona the best.
I think what's so exciting about this Elite Eight is I think there are 6 teams that could win. Now, I do think Purdue and UConn are a step below the other 4, and I think Illinois itself is a step below the other 3. But I could see a scenario where any of those 6, I don't see a scenario really where Tennessee or Iowa win the national championship. But like to have 6 of the 8 teams be like, there is at least a case to be made that this could happen, I think is really exciting. Obviously, like the big 3 are still the big 3 and like are heavy favorites for a reason. Yeah, I think Arizona, Michigan would be real. Is it disrespectful to Duke to say Michigan, Arizona is the national championship? Like, I feel like the way Michigan and Arizona have been playing and the fact that they are the top 2 teams on Ken Palm has some people in my life feeling that way of like that's basically the national title. That feels disrespectful to Duke, who was the one, the number 1 overall seed and the number 1 team on Ken Palm coming in. Do you see it that way? I know you said it would be a pick 'em, but I feel like you would be betting on Michigan or Arizona if we get to Sunday morning next week and it's one of those 2 teams against Duke, I feel like you are going to be picking whichever of those teams is there. Or am I wrong about that? Do you think it would you give Duke more of a shot than I'm giving you credit for?
No, I think the winner of Michigan, Arizona wins the national championship. I do think we're underrating Duke, though, just a little bit because they did look so dominant towards the end of ACC regular season play. They had that win over Michigan in DC. And like you could almost make the argument that maybe Duke is a little bit scarier because of the Foster injury. It's allowed Caden Boozer to play more and develop more. And, he's been in a lot more high leverage situations where they can really lean on him. And with Foster, I mean, John Shire said that was the first time last night he's played 5-on-5 since the injury. So you would think, I mean, if that's his like rusty game where he looks terrible, he's just only going to get better as they continue to play. And if he didn't get hurt, I think a lot of people, Duke would have been the most popular pick to win the national title. They absolutely can still win it. And we're definitely undervaluing them a little bit. But I would still take the winner of Michigan, Arizona.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't want to be disrespectful. Well, I want to be disrespectful to Duke. I'm wary of being disrespectful to Duke. I'll phrase it that way. But yeah, it does feel like just the way the teams are playing right now, Michigan, Arizona feels like the title game in reality. But again, I mean, it would still be an awesome game to see like Duke, Arizona or whatever it is.
Absolutely.
Do you, I guess like when looking at this group, does it feel, because we talked a lot going into this tournament, PJ, about how comparing to last year, it was like, oh, last year all 4 1 seeds make it, just the second time ever. This could be a repeat of that. Obviously, Florida isn't there. The other 3 teams, though, like still having this, it could be 3 1 seeds in the Final Four. Do you feel like the top 3 is comparable to last year's top 4? Again, now that we've seen a few games in the tournament, or do you feel like last year's group at the top was stronger? This group is still insanely good, but maybe a step down from last year. Or do you feel like these 3 teams could go toe to toe with those 4 from last year?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's tough. I think the recency bias, is really kind of clouding those teams from last year. I think that Duke team is probably better than the 3 ones that we have this year. But Duke obviously lost and they didn't even win the championship. But I think you look at, what like Knippel's doing in the NBA right now and Malawach and Sion James and obviously Cooper Flagg. That team was so loaded. I think that Duke team is still better than any of these 3 are, but I think whichever of those 3 ones you want to take from last year, if you compare them to the 3 ones from this year, I think the 3 we have this year might potentially be a little bit better. Because again, they're all top 6 in offense and defense. Like they're all top 6 in those categories. You go back to last year, Duke was 1 offense, 5 defense. Houston was 12 offense, 1 defense. Florida 2 offense, 6 defense, and Auburn was 3 offense, 9 defense. So, I mean, again, like they're all essentially top 12, top 10 in those categories. But to have those teams all top 6, I mean, they're just like a touch better. It's splitting hairs. I mean, it really, really is. I think the Duke team from last year overall the best, but I think, man, those 3 ones we have this year are really good. And I think Illinois is really, really good too. I mean, if we get Illinois Duke Final Four, that would be a hell of a game as well.
Yeah, we talked at the beginning of the tournament about how this is a really defense-driven year at the top of the rankings. And it's the top 3 defenses are Michigan, Arizona, and Duke. It's Michigan, then Duke, then Arizona in that order are the top 3 defenses. But it is actually the offenses, if you just look at KenPom, that are still alive. The 5 of the top 6 are still alive offenses in KenPom. The only one not there is Alabama, and they faced another one of these top 6 ones. Whereas defensively, outside of that top 3, UConn's the only one inside the top 10 on KenPom. The others, 11th, 32nd, and 36th. Oh, and 21st. So they are the defense is a little bit worse of the remaining 8 than the offenses. But of course, those 3 teams at the top are both, and that's what makes them so incredible. Parlay here from Sheldon: Duke, Michigan, Arizona, plus the over in points, Illinois, plus the over in points. That this is his parlay here. What do you think about this one, PJ? You can see it on the screen.
Man, there's a lot going on there. 1 to 10, 1 to 10. He's taking the over.
1 to 10s.
I mean, yeah, look, Sheldon thinks all these games, he likes the favorite in all the games, and he thinks all of them is going to be close. I can't argue with that. I mean, I would tend to agree. Again, that's why I think we like the favorites in every game, but we're just hesitant to kind of lay the points in every game. And it kind of feels like that's the prevailing thought amongst a lot of people is you think all the favorites are going to win. You think the chalk's going to hold, but you could see the underdogs keeping it close. You could see the underdogs having backdoor covers. I mean, it's been that kind of tournament so far where, even though it has been a little bit chalky, kind of these high profile games or these games on paper that we thought would be close have kind of all been close. So I think that's fair. That could be a good way to bet a lot of these games is you just you bet the winner, the favorite to win by like 1 to 10 points. I think could be a good way to go about it.
I think the reason I feel that way about being nervous with some of these spreads is I think you could make a case that while the four favorites are clearly the better teams, I think there is a case to be made that each of those teams in their respective matchup has the worst coach, or at the very least, it's not clear that they have the much better coach. Like, I think Hurley is obviously he's at this point a much more accomplished coach than Shire, even though Shire has done very well since taking over at Duke. I've already told you, I think McCollum is just straight up a better coach than Underwood. Like Tommy Lloyd, for as great as Arizona's been, he's never been to a Final Four. Like, Matt Painter has been to a national championship game and has been doing it longer. And then, Rick Barnes, like, has been doing it longer than May. That's the one where it's trickiest. But, like, May has only, gotten to the Final Four once, right? Like, he's very, very good. And I'm not trying to downplay him. But, like, I think there's a case to be made in every matchup, particularly the other three matchups besides Michigan, Tennessee, that the coach of the underdog is just the better coach. And in March, that matters to me. And that makes it harder for some of these larger spreads for me to want to lay the points with the coach that is maybe worse is the wrong word, but less experienced in a lot of these cases, less accomplished, certainly.
Which underdog do you think is going to be more popular outright? Do you think it's going to be Purdue or UConn?
I would guess UConn.
I would think so too.
I think Arizona has just looked too good. I mean, again, I know it came against Arkansas, but they're coming off a game where they scored 109 points. Like, I don't think people want to be betting, outright against them as much as they might like Purdue, in a vacuum. And UConn, I think people are going to say, like, when UConn gets this far, they go all the way, like, historically, and Hurley's done it twice. And Shire has disappointed with favorites before, like last year's Duke team did not win at all, of course, despite being like utterly loaded. So, like, I think UConn would be the one that most people would want to be backing.
I got to tell you too, watching UConn in person last night, their offensive sets are so impressive. I mean, the constant motion, like, Hurley is an X's and O's genius, man. We talk about the antics, obviously, and like what a character he is on the sideline, but just a pure basketball perspective, watching the plays, like you watch St. John's, Duke, and Michigan State and the offense that they run, and then you watch UConn's, and it's just like poetry, and it's just beautiful basketball, the way they're all cutting and moving in constant motion. So again, for Duke on a short turnaround to kind of get prepared for all those different sets, I think could be tricky. It makes me almost want to bet UConn a little bit like in the first half, maybe, right? Because Duke has been starting slow a little bit, ACC tournament, and also in the NCAA tournament as well. They were trailing St. John's, Siena at halftime, TCU was right with them. And just UConn with their March pedigree and the sets that they run on offense, coming out with a lot of energy. Obviously, they start that they got on Michigan State last night. I might be talking myself into some UConn first half, potentially, because I do think there is a chance they could be winning that game at halftime.
If I'm ranking upsets that I think are going to happen, the left side of the bracket are the two I'm starting with, because I just think that, well, obviously we already talked about Iowa and Illinois, and then the case for UConn is Hurley and how hard it is to turn around, and Duke having looked a little vulnerable at times. I'm not starting with the Arizona side or the Michigan side. Mm-hmm. We have more comments here. We're going to get out of here in a second, so I'm not going to pull them all up. But Dirty Red saying Duke could be in trouble. Purdue doesn't stand a chance. So there's some comments in here that are kind of going along those lines. As well. Last question that I want to answer, PJ. We got it from our producer, Seth here. If you like Iowa, are you correlating that to the under as well? We've talked about that before in previous rounds with them, but if you think Iowa and money line, plus 285, if you like that, would you also kind of pair it with the under, PJ?
I actually don't think so. When Iowa pulled off the upset against Florida, it was crazy. The game was 73-72. The total opened 145.5, closed at 144.5. So falling on 145, Obviously, depending on what number you got, you're either a winner or a loser. But I think for Iowa to pull off these upsets against these teams with good offenses that can be juggernauts, I think they're going to have to score with them a little bit. So with that total being at 139.5, I kind of think it's the same thing for Iowa. It's a race to 75. Can they win like a 75-72 game? Can they win a 75-71 game? Somewhere in that range. So I don't think it'll go over by much. But I think if you do like Iowa's spread and especially money line, I think it's actually probably correlated to the over. As much as they want to muck it up and keep it ugly, Illinois' offense is just too good. They're going to need to outscore them a little bit. So I think if you like Iowa, actually, I think it's correlated to the over.
Today's show is brought to you by our presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet, Florida's sportsbook. The biggest weekend in college basketball is almost here. The Elite Eight is set here. National champion just days away from cutting down the net. Now's the time to step up your game with daily dance and boosts on Hard Rock Bet. You'll get a live profit boost and a parlay profit boost for the games. More ways to shoot your shot, more ways to cash in with boosted odds when the stakes are at their highest. And those heart-stopping zero-on-the-clock moments we've been seeing all tournament, they still pay on Hard Rock Bet. They're handing out $25 bonus bets if a team you bet to win or cover hits a buzzer beater, because when the lights are brightest, every shot matters even more. If you haven't joined Hard Rock Bet yet, now is the time to check in the game. New signups can double their winnings on their first 10 bets, max of $50. That means if you would have won $100 on your bet, now it's $200. So don't sit on the bench. Download the Hard Rock Bet app today and get the party started. PJ, any final thoughts here before the Elite Eight?
I really hope Michigan and Arizona both win so we can get that game in the Final Four. That's with no dog left in the fight. My bracket pretty much cooked. Obviously, I'll be rooting for my individual bets, but I mean, if you're a basketball fan, like how can you not want to see that game? So that's my thoughts. I hope we get great games today that come down to the wire and they're awesome, but I would love to see that Arizona Michigan game.
I think I might be still alive in your bracket that you have going on here.
You might be, actually.
I have Arizona to win. I don't know how many people have UConn in the Final Four. I have them there, so that's keeping me alive a bit. So I don't think I'm like a heavy favorite in your group, but I'm still alive. And in our other friends bracket, I have Purdue as the champion. So it's a much larger pool. I'm hoping that differentiates me enough from people. So whoever wins Arizona Purdue, I will at least be alive in one of these brackets. Feels like. Yeah, thanks everybody for hanging out with us today. Super fun. We'll do this again next Sunday, like I said, same time, just on a different day of the weekend. We should have another show in the middle of the week, a recorded show, not a live stream, from PJ and myself talking about the Final Four as well. So keep a lookout for that on your feeds. If you want to support the channel, view us ad-free, and get better odds at winning our giveaways, please subscribe to the show. Thanks everybody for checking us out. For PJ, I'm Ryan. We'll see you next time.